going to talk today about optimizing customer journey. As background for that, I'll give you 3 simple frameworks that we apply in a process that lets us scale, given the small team that we have. So Crocs, we changed the footwear industry with one product. In less than 10 years, we went from no sales to $1 billion in sales. And the icon that we created is beloved the world over, and that is both a bonus and a detriment. And we'll talk about why that is as we move through the case studies. So the first thing I want to talk about is setting goals, because if we're going to optimize the customer experience, we have to have some metric that we're trying to maximize. That's just how optimization works. I like to think of goals as driver metrics, which are on the left side of an equation, or the left side of an equal sign, and a result metric was on, I'm flipping around for you, the right side. So the result metric would be like revenue, new customers, orders taken, the kind of stuff you're going to hear about from your CFO or your boss. And the other side of the equation, the drivers, are things that we can change in order to achieve those results. Examples would be visitation, site visitation, store visitation, conversion rate, AOV. These are things that we can control, and that's where we want to set goals that we can measure and test against. We have a pretty big goal, which is to take market share in casual footwear. I don't know if anybody is here in the footwear space, maybe one. More than 1,000 brands in our competitive set, but 2 of them take up more than half the market. We're less than 1% market share, and we need to grow that. How we're going to do it? It's basically an all of the above strategy, where we're going to acquire new customers, we're going to retain more of our current customers, and we're going to increase purchase frequency. Luckily, we have Castora to help us understand where we sit on each of these initiatives and execute programs to improve them. The second framework I want to talk about, having set goals, is to look at the customer journey through the phases of reach, engagement, and conversion, and then the all-important repeat. So reach would be an example of, you can apply across the journey. So total digital impressions I served last week is an example of reach. Total site visitation is an example of engagement, because it shows that there was some relationship between the reach you executed and the engagement that you delivered with that, and the conversion at the macro level, total customers acquired, total orders taken, something like that. Power of this framework, though, is it can be applied at any level in the customer journey, from the macro down to the micro. So how about, let's look at it from the point of view of acquiring new customers. So we deliver a whole bunch of digital ads. You may have seen them yourself. We generate site visitation, and we get people to make those purchases. So I can filter it just for new customers. I can look at the whole customer base. The framework is scalable up and down. I can look at it in an individual marketing tactic. So how does reach, engage, convert work for an email? So the reach is the number of emails we sent. Engagement is how many people opened. Conversion is how many people clicked on the email. So the end goal doesn't always have to be placing an order. I think it was one of the earlier panelists today talked about some micro conversions that we need to set goals around in order to achieve the big goals that our executives set for us. The second framework that we use in a cycle is iteration. So we think of it as breeding ideas, rolling them out to real customers, testing those against our goals that we set at the first step, and keeping what works and throwing away that which doesn't. So you may recognize this as a rebranded plan, do, check, act framework, which was popularized by Edwards Deming long ago. Still works. So examples. How does this actually work for us, Crocs, leveraging Castora? First example I want to talk about is how do we acquire new customers? So we can look at our customer base, find the high-value consumers, how we acquired them in the first place, and use those attributes to go out and spend money against a targeted set of activations that have a goal of converting brand new customers. And the way we've set up our analytics and other platforms, we can tell new versus returning at the customer level upon conversion, and we can feed that back into the planning and budgeting cycle. So we needed to figure out what are the most important attributes to use in choosing valuable customers, and could we use a DMP or other third party to build lookalike audiences for that? Turns out we could. We are almost literally an 80-20 business in e-commerce. I looked at the top quintile of our customers, summed up their customer equity, 77%. So I'm going to just go ahead and round that to 80. We're at 80-20. So I took the top 20, or we, the team, took our top 20% most valuable customers and leveraged cookie syncing between our identity platform and an advertising network and built an audience of, these are our valuable customers as identified on the advertising network. And we took some of the brand spend that the CMO had in his budget, which is great because I didn't have to do it, and spent that against a persona-targeted audience, which was just, I think, 35 to 55-year-old women interested in outdoors, etc., versus a lookalike audience built off of our valuable customers. What did we get? Well, the return on ad spend on the lookalike targeted segment was 40 times the return on ad spend in the untargeted. It was a small experiment because we had a relatively small match rate, but I'm confident that when we scale this up, it'll be at least a 10x. And this is the point where you can start to have arguments with your finance about unlimited budgets. One of the nice things about e-commerce, ours in particular, is that it can be a negative cash conversion cycle. Right? If I'm selling something through Google, I actually have the money in the bank product at the customer's hands before I pay the bill. And so do play around with that conversation with finance, see how it goes. Another example, how do our channels work together to retain our current customers? We have a pretty good email opt-in rate. Email is a critical element of our recent success and growth. But not everybody is addressable via email. Excuse me, not everyone is addressable via email. So how do we combine channels to see if we can get lift on top of what we already get out of email and also extend our reach? So what do we do? So we looked at customer purchase patterns, leveraged the win-back models that Kastora provides out of the box. This was actually one of the first things we did with Kastora. People have asked me, who aren't yet customers, like, how'd you make the case? This pays for Kastora, no problem. For our customer base, I can't necessarily say it's going to apply to you. So we leveraged our audience of people who are ready to repurchase but have fallen off cycle. And if we could email them, we did. And we tested out no offer, some offer, a better offer. And for those that we couldn't email, we used Facebook's Customer Match to deliver them targeted digital ads. And for those we could reach in both ways, we did that too, and there's actually a lift on both sides. The Facebook results for that group were higher than the sole Facebook, and the same on the email side. This is pretty cool stuff. So how are we going to increase purchase frequency? That's kind of hard because footwear, you only have so many wearing occasions, you only have so many pairs of shoes that you need. I think we can sell more kids' shoes, but I need to talk to product about that. So we worked with Jordan and team over a long time, and also with Monetate, to try to identify customers who were more or less likely to purchase on discount. And then we ran an experiment where we had a site-wide promotion, and we suppressed it from those a test segment of both sides of that, sensitive and not sensitive, to try to get to a point where we could do less promotions because we, at the person level, what we found was not necessarily that people were sensitive to price, but there was a really strong signal that there is a disparity among our customers as far as how much they're willing to spend, period, for shoes. And this put in place some of the plumbing that it's going to take to activate Kastora Insights through Monetate to deliver a personalized experience based on our customer data. And we ended up finding out something that wasn't exactly the hypothesis, but it's still going to be valuable. We're trying to figure out exactly how to monetize this now. Given that we're heading into holiday, it's probably going to be a Q1 project, so maybe we can come back next year and talk about how we put multiple points on our gross margin just through price discrimination. Finally, there's a capability that is required to do all this stuff across all channels. I want to talk a little bit about it. It sounds like I'm actually, we're way behind some of you in this room today. But if you don't know who somebody is at every possible touch point, it's going to be really hard to optimize their experience. And so at some level, somebody in your organization needs to be focused really diligently on building an identity service, whether that is your CRM or a DMP or something like that. The ability to have a unique record of who everybody is, whether they're anonymous or known, and the ability to look that up and enrich it as you get more data is going to be critical as we move ahead into a much more competitive landscape in e-commerce. What we know about our customers is of enormous value. It's our job to turn that into profits, and I think having identity at the core of it is going to be an important way to execute that strategy. I wanted to share, I don't know if time for a short story? Okay, so I'm from Colorado, and identity and knowing who somebody is can seem like a really tough problem in a digital environment because they're on the other side of the screen. We have cookies break, etc. Our governor in Colorado, his name's John Hickenlooper, so he's a politician. He was formerly the mayor. Before that, he was a really successful restaurateur. This guy, he has a disability that you would not imagine. He has face blindness. You guys know what face blindness is? He can't tell who somebody is by looking at their face, even himself in the mirror, right? So this is a guy who's been successful in politics, successful in restaurants, and he can't use the most common way to identify people. So he figured out adaptations. So he basically knows everybody's voice the way we know faces. So think about that the next time you think you don't have enough data to identify and personalize that you can if you work hard.
So we're here to talk about data plus brand equaling love, because that's what we're all about, right? Everybody's here for the love. So this is really about brand touch points that are powered by analysis. So how do we get our brand out there and tell our brand stories, but use data and analysis to power them in such a way that it's actually a self-sustaining campaign? Oh, that's me. Ooh, big picture. This is me in my most glamorous state. You'll never see me looking that good in real life. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for Eloquy, as Vicki said. Find me on Twitter. So today I'm going to give you a quick little intro to Eloquy and then talk about 3 brand touch points that we use data heavily to inform. Our catalog, our editorial content hub, predictive segmented email, and then I think we'll get Ben back up here and take some questions. So I think a lot of you heard a little bit about Eloquy already because my CEO, Mariah Chase, gave the keynote, and she's a genius, so whatever she said trumps whatever I say. But she's not actually here anymore, so you can actually go ahead and believe me. So Eloquy, for any of you who missed it, we are a plus-size women's apparel startup. We've been live for about 2.5 years. We focus on trend-driven fashion, sizes 14 to 28. So like my dress, an example of that. This is not exactly what a typical plus-size retailer would have offered historically. Something with a big, bold pattern that's making a fashion statement that looks hot off the runway. That's pretty new in this industry. We're based in New York City and in Columbus. We're obsessed with fit and quality, newness, trends, and of course, our customer, who is the North Star for absolutely everything that we do. So first, let's talk about our catalog. So this is my personal favorite. This is like my baby, our catalog program that we launched last November, and we're about to send out our 5th catalog, which goes out week after next, so really excited about that. And the way we first started talking about catalog was kind of interesting because it's a little bit backwards, right? Like an e-com pure play startup who's all about data, all about tracking clicks and acquisition paths and all of that, to say like, let's go into direct mail now. That's a little bit backwards from how things have gone historically. But where the conversation actually started with us was talking about our brand and how we get our aspirational photography in front of customers in a way that lives longer than it does online. I mentioned that we are a fast fashion retailer. We debut hundreds of new styles every month, and that means we have hundreds of beautiful photographs that if you look at them, you would think like, oh, this could be an ad in Vogue. But there is no Vogue for plus size. So there's no place for us to put that. So we said like, well, let's just create it ourselves, why not? So it started out as talking about a way to get our brand messaging out there. But we're a startup, we have limited budget, we have to be super efficient with everything that we do. So it's like, okay, we're gonna do it right. It's gonna be both a direct response and a brand vehicle. So when it comes to direct response, we look at 2 primary areas. There's acquisition and there's retention. For acquisition, we sent to prospects, and we are seeing strong results there with an efficient CAC, or customer acquisition cost, and a high LTV. So that's the best of both worlds, right? Sometimes you have like a high acquisition cost, but your LTV is high enough that your ratio is still good. Sometimes it's the opposite. Catalog, we've actually found the ability to acquire as efficiently as we are digitally, but with a much, much higher LTV. Then we get into retention, and we say like, okay, here we're sending to our existing customers, we're looking for ROI. So ROI coming in from our first few catalogs was strong, but how do we make it stronger? How do we get even more out of that? And that's where, enter Custora, our host. We work with Custora to identify which customer segments have the highest incrementality ratio from the catalog. And I can get into tactics later with anybody who's super interested. But basically, we were able to go into Custora, look at predefined tiers of customers, so like platinum, gold, silver, bronze, et cetera, and plot them out over time and say like, okay, what's the engagement rate of these different segments over time? And it was so fascinating when you look at that and you see some segments have a huge spike when they receive a catalog, and others just keep right on trucking. So you can actually see the incrementality just looking at a graph like that. And when you see that, then we're able to say like, okay, great, so here's who we're moving the needle with on catalog, here's who we're not. Let's remove the ones who aren't being moved by this, and there's not like a separate brand reason to send it to them, i.e. like if they're a best customer, they're gonna get it no matter what, just because we love them and we wanna continue that. But by doing this, we're able to increase the ROI, and we're able to make this essentially a really effective DR program that doesn't look like one. Because I have some visual aids, if anybody wants one later. But our catalog looks like a magazine. And actually, when customers talk about it on social media, they call it a magazine. So they'll post a photo of it, like an artful lay down with like latte art and say like weekend reading, because they're really thinking of this as a magazine and not a catalog. Yet if you look at the metrics, it's a successful DR program. Next touch point I want to talk about is our editorial content hub. So you'll notice a continuing theme here, which is content, content, content. It wouldn't be a marketing conference if we weren't all talking about content. So earlier this spring, we thought, okay, we've got all of this amazing photography, editorial content, things that are really pushing our brand forward. A lot of it has a very short life, though, prior to this hub. So we would push something out in email, and then it's there, and then it evaporates forever. So we thought, like, let's create a hub or a place to keep this, because to a new visitor to the site, it all looks new, right? So why not utilize it as much as you can, amortize the cost, be as efficient as possible. So we created a content hub called Style and Substance, and that's this top image here. It contains lookbooks, blog posts, what's going on in our office, and our flagship content property, which is called our Spotlight series. It's where we actually fly a customer into our New York City office every month, and they become the model and the muse for the day. So we do full hair and makeup. They like do the whole look. They're like outside on the street. People are staring at them. We do the full photo shoot, and we interview them, and we tell their story. So that's what this on the bottom is an example of. This is our customer, Hayat. Oh, I didn't realize we were matching. Oh, me and Hayat, always matching. So she's a real customer of ours. She lives in Chicago. She's just this awesome, cool woman. She works in brand strategy at an agency in Chicago. And so we flew her to New York, and we do this whole magazine-like piece and put it up. And what we found through our tracking, because of course this all relates back to data and how do we look at this and prove out every concept with data, we can see that customers who engage with the Content Hub spend twice as long on site. So they double the amount of time we get with them. And as you guys all know, every extra second you get with a customer is precious. Every extra second is another chance for you to make an impression on her in terms of what it is that, who you are, what are you doing, what's your value. So they double their time on site, and then when they convert, their AOV is 15% higher. So they're spending more when they do convert because they're more familiar with your assortment, with your brand story, with all of that. So we see in the metrics that it works. So again, this is really brand heavy. This is like a magazine for our brand, yet again, it's functioning as direct response. Last touch point I want to talk about is predictive segment emails. So in this room, raise your hand if you send at least one segmented email per month. It's pretty much everybody. If you're not, I'm not judging you, don't worry. But a lot of us are thinking every day about how can we make our emails smarter, how can we say the right thing to the right person at the right time. And the way we've historically done that is with rule-based segments. So just saying, okay, it's been 90 days since you've purchased, so I'm gonna go ahead and trigger this email to you that's a win-back email. 90 days, you get it, that's what it is, it's the right message, the right person, the right time. With predictive segments, we're actually trying to go one step better, and we're trying to say like, okay, you, person A, you haven't bought in 90 days, and so it's time for me to try to win you back. But you, person B, you actually normally buy every week like clockwork, so as soon as you go 14 days without buying, I know it's time to send you a win back, even though it's so much earlier than person A. So it's really getting more specific, looking at that person, taking the data that they're giving you with their normal behavior and using that to send the right message to the right person at a righter time. So I know I started this out by talking about brand love, and when you talk about segmented email, you may be thinking like, that's pretty much like as direct response as you can get, talking about a segmented email. But I would actually argue that saying the right thing to the right person at the rightest time is a brand touch point, because you're proving to her in that moment, at least for me it's a her, you're proving to her that you know her better than anyone else. You know her better than she knows herself. And that builds so much trust with the customer, even if they're not ready to like click and buy right then for whatever reason. You're earning that with her, and you can cash it in at a later time. So the brand love is there. Here's an example of one of our predictive segment emails. So this is a win-back email, but we actually have a twist on it, which is that it's churn prevention, not win-back. So instead of waiting to win back, instead, we want to find you before you churn, and we want to get you then. So we power this with Custora's algorithms. We use Bronto for our ESP. It's super easy. It's like plug and play, like drop down. Makes my retention marketing manager's life much, much easier. In this way, we're actually trying to find someone before they churn in a way that's specific to their unique shopping patterns. And what's interesting is when we look at the results from this, yes, we see conversion lift in the people who are designated as like lost customers or likely to be lost customers, but where we see a bigger conversion impact is on people who are cooling down or at risk. So that means that by sending this to somebody before they're lost, we're actually gathering up more goodness than we would if we waited for them to have demonstrated more that they're already lost in their behavior. Another program that's powered by Custora, we do VIP programming. So you'll see on the left some examples of screenshots, but like you're the first to know about a product that's back in stock, pre-shop our fall collection. The idea here is to find our top customers by predictive lifetime value, which has been mentioned before and probably will be again, and give them early access to events and sales. So the reason this is different from how I've done it at other companies in the past, and probably how a lot of you guys have done it, is I've looked at VIPs before and said okay, if you have spent over this dollar threshold to date, you're gonna be in this segment. But there's a big problem with that, which is what if somebody bought last week for the first time and they spent $900? Now for me that's a really high AOV. That's 8 times more than my regular AOV. So that person is signaling to me in a big way that they are going to be a top customer. But if I just used a dollar threshold and said, okay, either you've spent over 1,000 or you haven't, I would not catch that person as a VIP. And therefore I'm losing an opportunity to message to one of my most valuable customers, just because they haven't given me enough data yet. So instead, using Custora's predictive algorithm finds VIPs earlier, because it looks at them and says, not just have you already spent enough, but do I believe you're going to spend enough? So results from this, we get a much higher response rate to these customers using early access messaging. That's probably a given, right? If you just say, shop our fall Katie collection versus pre-shop early access, you get a higher response rate. But then also, we actually see increased order frequency in that period. Because here's what we do, is we say, pre-shop our fall Katie collection, and then 2 days later, we include those people in the email to everyone that says, now introducing our fall Katie collection. That does 2 things. First of all, it proves to her that she really did get early access, because she sees later, she's like, oh, I get it. Like, they're actually launching this now, but I really did get early access. So you earn a little bit of cred for next time you do it. But then also, we see some of our best customers shop both times. So they'll buy when we send early access, and then when we send the second one, they're like, oh, I really did want that other color. And then they go ahead and buy again. So we get that increased order frequency as well. So thank you so much, TYSM. That's like my team and I, we have all these acronyms and emails because there's just so many the same thing back and forth. So it's always #TYSM.